In this video, I show you how to bore a hole that's 35 millimeters on the door side of a cabinet with the Festool LR 32 system. Big D, we're gonna bore some hinges today. On the cabinet, we did the hinge plate, right? It's two pieces, but now on the door, we gotta bore the hole for this. You remember what size this was?
30, I think.
That's why we're doing this video again. It's 35. So let's refresh our memory on the hinge plate and where we bored the first hole. Come in here, Chris, right here. Okay? The distance from the side of the cabinet to that first hole that these pins go in, and it's spaced 32 millimeters, is 80 millimeter. All right, so what we have to do when we set up the cabinet side, and you can see the videos, we'll list them in the description, all things LR32. The key to this is the markings on here. You see where it says 16? So when we count, we set this up, and you'll know remember the adage, up facing me and out toward me. 3 holes will mark the rail, will give us the first hole at 80.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but today we're going to switch it around, and I'll cover this for the door side. There's a marking here, 32.
Oh.
And where that will place the 35 millimeter cup hinge is right in the center here. Okay, so what this will do, when we set it 32 up and out, the hinge will snap right in, and you can see where the cup is right here in the exact center between those.
Cool.
It's all built in to the system.
All right, Sedge, this door isn't even with this door.
So what we have here, and when we're setting up the end stops and placing the LR32 rail on here, we have to compensate for this. So if you remember the side of the cabinet, we cut it at 768 millimeters, which is an increment of what? 32 millimeter. We cut the doors, the stiles here, okay, to give us a 2 millimeter reveal top and bottom. So this was cut at 764.
Okay.
Now here's the first tip I'm going to give you when we do this. This is how I want this shaker flat panel door here. Okay. And actually, I want it flipped up like this because I think that's more appealing to my eye, this cherry grain. What I do is, because I've made this mistake a lot, is I go like this, and I just roughly draw which style I'm going to place those hinges.
Makes sense.
So let's keep this simple. Hey, Big D, can you reach and get me a couple of clamps?
Sure.
One of the things I've seen people over the years struggle with is how they clamp their door on their MFT. Now, what I like to do is give myself plenty of support. If I go like this, it's tilted, right? Because it's fitting or it's slipping into the flat panel. So I want it completely supported. So I just pick a couple holes, I clamp off the diagonal. That way there I still have access underneath here when I place the rail. I'll show you that now. To clamp the rail, you always clamp the rail to the door in this exercise. Okay, so the end stops allow us to, from this end to this end, position it perfectly. Okay, we'll go through that in a minute. But first I want to cover the parallel stops, which allows us from this front edge to bore exactly a 35 millimeter cup hinge. There's a couple parts of the equation we got to talk about. So let's take this hinge here. And in the schematics, when you buy in hinges, there's a thing that all the manufacturers, it doesn't matter what brand, they call it the tab. 95% of the time, the tab is 5 millimeters. I'm just going to roughly draw that. So that hinge has to sit exactly here. So let's do a little bit of math. I'm just going to write it here. Okay. So the hinge size is what?
35.
Wow, Big D. So I'm going to draw a center. Okay.
Okay.
So what's half of 35?
17 and a half.
Very good. That's quicker than me.
Oh.
Okay, but we want to make that, if that's in the center, and we got to include the tab, so we got to add 17 and a half plus 5, and that equals what?
22.5.
22. So what I do is I round up. You have adjustability in the hinges.
Oh, okay.
So we'll set it at, and I'm going to put this so we see this, 23 millimeter. Set that at 23. I'll set this at 23. So I've highlighted this here, and we have a video on that as well. But see, you always go not at 0, the line next to 0, and you set it at 23 and lock it in. So let's talk about the numbers facing up. Come in here, cameraman. The numbers facing up toward me, but look, you see these little knobs here, these little pins? 32 facing out to me. I always put it on the end, and I want the visual so everybody sees that. The holes line up, so it's 32 up and out. And we'll put on the other side. So Big D, you could put this 32 up and out all the way, but if you just realize, check this out, you get it to the closest hole, you see, and there's a little bit of space in there. Now go ahead and put the screw in there.
Okay.
Okay, so when we were doing the side of the cabinet, that was a tight fit. Okay, so we only had one set of lines. Now we have movement.
Oh.
But remember, we cut this down 2 millimeters top, 2 millimeters, so it's 764. Okay, good. That's a 4 millimeter space in there. But that's good because now we'll be able to align it absolutely perfect.
Sounds good.
End stops are on.
Yep.
Now it's parallel stops. So let's bring this in, Big D. And they press fit on because we've already pre-tightened them. We've already did our what? Calibration. Okay, now, what is half of 4?
Oh man, 2.
Okay, so I have a 2 millimeter gauge block. Okay, you can use 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter. I take sometimes 1 millimeter edge banding, fold it in half and put it in there. But what we gotta do is I want to create a perfect space in there. So I take that, I go like that, and when we do the other one, we'll come from this side. After we unclamp it, I'm just going to grab a clamp here. I'm going to take it underneath. Always make sure that these pins are up against here. Sometimes they move. And I'm going to clamp it with that 2 millimeter, and I want to clamp it on the rail here. That's why we've clamped off the diagonal of the MFT. And we are ready to go. We're almost there.
All right.
Let's do this. Let's take these off because we press fit them on and we get a nice rail ready to go. Let's mark the rail. Remember when I said 3 full holes? We got our shim stock in there. You can probably see the red in there. 1, 2, 3. And then when we move and shift this rail, after we bore this hole, we'll count, it's not the half hole, you gotta count 1, 2, 3. And that's what you're gonna see in the viewfinder of the LR32 plate.
Okay.
So now, we're completely set up, everything's ready to rock and roll. Say we have 20 doors, we can knock them out lickety-split because the system is set up.
Awesome. All right, Sedge, what's next?
Hey, it's about time, right? Okay, we gotta set depth.
Okay.
Now, I'll reference more video again that we've shot already on this. And all the calibration is in that video, all things LR32, and I'll put it in the description. Okay, so we're all set, we're ready to rock and roll, but we need to know depth. And what I don't think I've ever seen anything different. It's 13 millimeters in depth. So to keep it easy, let's set depth on the router. What is 5 and 8?
13.
Man, he's good at metric. I took a 5 millimeter domino and an 8 millimeter domino, and I CA glued them together. I just like to make things easy. Let's go through the steps of setting depth. I lock the router in, okay? And this is a no-brainer. And now I've taken the depth stop rod and I loosened it here, right? So if I set this and lock it in and we push it down, it's not gonna cut nothing. We have to create space, okay? So what I'll do is I'll take that 5 and 8, I'll put them in there and lock it in, and we'll get 13 millimeters of depth. Now, the other thing I will point out is because that 35 millimeter bit is larger, I will slow that down between around 4 on the scale.
Okay.
Hey, Big D, what's next?
Dust extraction.
Go ahead and put it on.
Okay. I'll get the window open. I don't think that's gonna.
Okay, now what you need to do, and here's the tip of the day. You got to take that piece off. That's big enough. Okay, so we'll set that window off to the side. We'll slide it on, right? We'll verify that that will go through there.
Hey!
But what I like to do, you see how that's still open? To maximize my dust extraction, I take a little blue tape and I put it just like that to continue the shroud.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'll bore a hole, you bore a hole, but here is where I want to talk a little bit about safety. Watch my hand. My hand now never leaves that. I don't have electricity to this yet. Okay, I have the dust extraction. I like to use a 36 millimeter hose with this. See how my hand has never left this? Okay, it's just a good rule of thumb. You turn it on here and lock it here. I always cycle it off to make sure it is off before I put my plug-it cord. My hand hasn't moved. And you can see the viewfinder right here. And you'll notice, Big D, my hand never left here. Okay? So I just dropped the hinges. You're going to notice, look at that. That's the perfect hole. Hey, Mo! All right? We got to put these back on because now we have to shift it with the shim stock. So we'll take it like this. Big D, I'm going to let you put that shim stock and the... Tell me when you got it in there.
Should be good.
Okay, just like this. We're going to make sure that's up against there and go ahead and lock that in. Good, and I'll lock mine in. Big D, does it look good?
From my perspective.
Okay, but let's check out this perspective. See that? Oh. This is one of those systems that you set up. You have to look at everything. Okay? And don't get, as I say, cocky. You've got to verify everything. That would have pushed us off, and those hinges would have had a tough time lining up even with the adjustment. So that's why you check everything. Go ahead and pull it off. Wow, that's about the best hole I've ever seen.
Nice.
Okay, Big D. You think we got it?
I hope so.
Okay, let's take off the clamps. There's only one way to tell. Go ahead and stand that up.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to use these Bloom inserter hinges. Take that and let's lock it in here. Okay, let's just lock it in. Go ahead and take that one, lock it in.
Okay.
All right, Big D, fingers crossed. Just kidding. You never doubt the Festool system, baby. Let's bring it over. Chris, come in here so we can see this. Let's see if it's the first time's a charm on this. Lock it in, snap it in. Okay, drum roll. Oh yeah, we gotta put some soft close on there. Now let's take the 2 millimeter and look at that. Feel that, Big D, perfectly flush.
Nice.
All right, little adjustment, little tweaking on the reveals and we're good. So it's a simple setup. And now we have a standalone video on the cup hinge. We had it buried in the Sheikah flat panel video, remember? It was at the end. And everybody was saying, hey, when are you going to do the door side? So there you go. And hopefully this helps. And as we always say, in the SedgeTool shop,
Be positive.
stay sharp, wicked sharp.